Okay, so you have paper out. You should be looking at the bell ringer. If you need paper. Yes. So question number 1 is, who led the Counter-Reformation? Who is in charge of it? What organization? What individuals? That kind of thing. Okay. Number 2 is, where did Columbus think he was when he landed? Okay. Where did he think he was? Not where did he land. Where did he think he was? So be writing these down and your answers, please. Anybody know what we're having for lunch today?
Pizza.
Pizza and something else.
It's always pizza.
Yeah, pizza every day.
It's so cold.
We get a choice.
Okay, so number 1, let's go ahead and go over these. Number 1, who led the Counter-Reformation? This is what we talked about at the beginning of yesterday's class period. Who led the Counter-Reformation? Yes, sir.
The Pope.
The Pope. Okay, what organization is the Pope affiliated with? Somebody raise your hand and tell me. Hunter?
The Catholic Church, I think.
Catholic Church, yeah. So the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. All right. So the Counter-Reformation means that it's after what? If there's a Counter-Reformation, then what does there have to be?
A reformation.
A Reformation to begin with, right? So what is that Reformation called? Yes, sir.
Protestant or English?
Protestant Reformation, and then we also have the English Reformation, which is talking about what? What is the English Reformation about?
Changing the new churches and getting away from the Roman Church.
All right, so they got away from the Catholic Church also. Who did the English Reformation? Who was responsible for that, and why did they do that? Yes, sir. King Henry VIII. Why did he do that? What did he want?
A divorce.
He wanted a divorce, right? So he asked the Pope. He was good friends with the Pope. It's like, hey, Mr. Pope, can I get a divorce? This is my brother's wife, my brother's widow. So the Bible says I'm not supposed to do this. You let me do this. So can we undo this? He says, no, you can't. So basically, the king is like, well, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to start my own church. So that's the English Reformation. And then the Protestant Reformation is, who starts that up? Let's look for somebody else. Let's get some new comments in here. Come on. Who is responsible? Who is the guy who starts the Protestant Reformation? For yes, ma'am. Martin Luther. All right, what church gets started in his name?
He said it.
Martin Luther. Protestant, but
He knows it.
yes, sir. Lutheran Church. Okay, so we have the Catholic Church, and we have the Lutheran Church. Okay, and we have that split. Then what is what's the name of the church that Henry starts? Yes, sir.
The England.
And what?
England.
Anglican, which means Anglican. Okay, very close. So Anglican Church, or what else is it known as?
English Church.
The Church of England. Okay, so he is the head of the Church of England at that point. All right. So those are all of our reformations that we talked about. Okay. Now the Counter-Reformation is the last of these, and it deals with some of the things that Martin Luther brings up. So what is the Pope trying to address with the Counter-Reformation? All right, Hunter.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, he was like saying that, like, he was saying that no matter what they say, they're right. Kind of.
Okay, so the Catholic Church and the priests have the final say in the interpretation of the Bible. This is one thing that they're saying. What are some things that they do? The Pope forms like an A-team or a task force. What is the name of that task force? What do they call themselves?
But I know one thing.
All right, starts with a J. Starts with a J. Not Jehovah's Witness. All right, the Jesuits. Anybody remember the Jesuits? What did they do? They did three things. They did three things. What are some of those three? Who can tell me one of those three things? Come on. Who can tell me? All right, Hunter, get it started.
They recruited non-Christian.
Okay, so they go after non-Christians instead of trying to get the Protestants back into the fold. They recruit new people. All right.
Did they say you could buy your
Okay, that's before now. So they're selling indulgences. They do outlaw that. That is part of. They say selling indulgences. We're not gonna do that anymore. But they do still say that the church is the final say on biblical interpretation. Okay. All right. Okay? So that's one thing. So the Jesuits do that. They also, to address the issue that Martin Luther talks about with the priests being uneducated, what do?
They
make a school.
They make a school. Okay. So they make a school. They make the school, and the Jesuits are in charge of the school, and then they go after non-Christians for a new following base. And then there's one more thing. It's a little more general than those last two. All right, so the third thing is that they do everything they can to slow the spread of Protestantism. Okay. Now, that's the big points of the Counter-Reformation that you need to remember. Okay. All right. Now, number two. Where did Columbus think he was when he landed? Support. Asia. Okay, so Asia, India, the Indies. He thought that he was basically in that area, which is why he called the people he saw there what? Indians. Okay, so he thought that he had gone. So he thought what he was going to do was go from Spain. He was going to go straight across.
It's frozen.
It's frozen. Yeah. Anyway, so he thought he was going to go from Spain all the way across and go, if this is a globe, come out on the other side and land in the Indies, right? But what's in the way? Continent, right? So he lands where? Who can tell me where he actually does land?
The Bahamas.
The Bahamas, the Caribbean, this area. Okay, and he's gonna land there, and he's gonna make a couple trips there, back and forth, and check out that area. Okay, so that's where he was. So, did he think that he had discovered a new world?
No.
No. He thought he had discovered this over here because there's a lot of islands on this side over here, and there's a lot of islands right here. So you can see how maybe he thought that this was a different place. Okay. Yeah, I did draw on the next slide when it's unfrozen. All right. Okay, so let's talk about some of these guys that we talked about yesterday. Dry erase some of this. Okay. Does anybody remember what Bartolomeo Diaz did?
On the southern tip of Africa and one of those gyres.
Gyres. Okay, so he sails around the southern tip of Africa using the mid-ocean gyres and the giant ocean currents. Okay. Then Vasco da Gama, he's going to sail where? What does he do? He sails all the way around the tip of Africa and into India. Okay, so he goes even further than Bartolomeo Diaz. Where are these two guys from?
Spain.
Are they from Spain? This guy's from Spain.
England.
Portugal. Okay, Portugal does this first. Anybody remember somebody, the navigator?
Hang on.
Prince Henry the Navigator. He funds these guys doing this to begin with and gets all this navigation started, all this exploration. Okay. Then, inspired by the Portuguese, the Spanish get involved. Who are the Spanish people that fund Christopher Columbus?
Ferdinand, Isabella.
Ferdinand and Isabella. Okay, so the king and queen, they fund Christopher Columbus against their better judgment and the judgment of some experts who said that he was crazy and that this is not something that's doable, right? So they actually asked two experts, and they said, no, this is crazy. There's no way he could do this. And as we just discussed, he really underestimates what the world looks like. Okay, he underestimates the distance that he's traveling and what's going to be in front of him. Okay, so there's a big misunderstanding with his logic in this. Okay, and they knew about that at the time. Okay, all right, now Vasco Nunez de Balboa, he crosses. So Christopher Columbus, he goes to the Americas, but he doesn't think of it as the Americas, right? He doesn't know yet that this is the New World necessarily. Okay, these guys are some further Spanish explorers who are going to confirm that this is a new world. Okay, so Vasco Nunez de Balboa, he crosses the Panama, or not the Panama, he crosses Panama. I'm thinking of the Panama Canal. He crosses Panama and reaches the Pacific Ocean going straight through, right? So he confirms, by doing this, he confirms that, okay, this is not Asia. There's nowhere in Asia that's like this. There's nowhere in India that's like this. So this is a new place. This is a different place entirely, right? All right. Now, there's another guy, Ferdinand Magellan, who is going to go further than this, and he goes around the southern tip of South America. Okay, so he actually does what Columbus thought he was doing. He goes all the way around. He circumnavigates the globe. He and his men do. I don't think he survives the trip, but he goes from Spain down past Africa, past South America, and around the tip, and goes all the way into the Pacific Ocean and the Philippines. Okay, so this is a big moment. This is a big moment where we finally broken all the way across, right? So he does that, and then we have these two guys that we talked about already, right? These guys we should be familiar with. Cortez and Pizarro, they land in the Americas and do a lot of conquering, and they bring what with them?
Gold, slaves.
Smallpox. Okay, they bring smallpox, and it does what to the civilizations nearby?
Kills them.
Wipes them out. Causes a pandemic. Causes a lot of civil unrest in the civilizations that are actually pretty strong civilizations, but due to all of this political unrest, we have a big upset and a big upheaval and some civil wars and that kind of thing. And then the Spanish come in and they basically make light work of the survivors. Okay, that's a little bit of an understatement because they did fight back and they were very persistent. But in the end, smallpox is a large contributor to what happens to them. Okay. Now this guy, Zheng Ha, is just a honorable mention. He is not necessarily a global explorer like everybody else. He is just a very skilled and proficient admiral before these guys even, get their feet wet, so to speak. So he is dominating the oceans with his giant armadas before they even start sailing around, right? So he's a big deal, and I just thought we could talk about him for a minute. Okay. All right. Now we talked about the gyres yesterday, but I just kind of pointed to it on the map. This is a diagram of all the actual currents, right? So this is what we were talking about here. So if you're talking about going down the tip of Africa to the tip of Africa, like who did that?
Yeah.
Bartolomeo Diaz. He does that first, right? So he goes. What he's going to do is he's going to go right here from Portugal. He's going to go on this blue current. Then he's going to catch this black current right here. And then he's going to sail around the tip here to here, right? And this is where he lands, right here.
Well, how? There's a current.
Yeah. So this current helps him, this current helps him, and he follows the coastline there, okay?
Okay.
Now, there's some people who think that he went this way with the current and landed like that.
Well, that makes more sense.
That makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
So this is a possible theory. They think this because there are a lot of civilizations along this right here, right? So he might have stopped to resupply and that kind of thing. But this is this big ocean gyre. All right, now let's think about the next guy. All right, so let's just start over here. So the next guy was who?
What's his name? Hang on, I can read.
It's not Chris.
It's
Vasco da Gama. Okay, what's he gonna do? What's he do? He goes past the tip of Africa, and where?
To Asia.
Okay, he goes all the way in, right? So he follows this current.
All the way around.
He goes all the way around.
It's that current.
Okay, and he gets here. Okay, right? So he's following the currents. Everybody here is going to be following these currents. So you can see it's a little easier to understand how this is all possible, right? It's a little bit easier to comprehend this way. Now, when we're talking about who's the guy who circumnavigated the globe? What's his name?
You mean tried or actually did?
Actually succeeded. Columbus wanted to, but this guy actually succeeded.
Vasco Nunez and Balboa, I think. Or something like that.
Vasco Nunez de Balboa.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, let's look here. Let's remind ourselves. Okay. Let's go over here. All right. So sailed around the southern tip of America and sailed across the Pacific Ocean to the Philippines. Ferdinand Magellan. Okay. So he does that, and he goes. How do we think he went? So starting from here,
Comes down.
he goes down, cuts across this equatorial current, and then goes down this current, and then catches this Arctic subpolar, and then goes on up, okay? So he goes all the way across, and he's going to come all the way out to here, okay?
34.
It's 11:34, okay? So you can see how this is gonna help exploration a lot. The discovery of these gyres and ocean currents makes things way easier once we start realizing where these things are and where they go. Okay. All right. Here is a map of where everybody actually ended up. Okay. So here we have. Let's see. So here's Columbus in red. So he just goes here and then he comes back. And then Diaz goes down to the southern tip of Africa and stops. Then Da Gama goes under the southern tip of Africa and goes all the way to India, right? And then we have Magellan, who he's going to go right here, go all the way across, and end up here, and then come back. So he goes all the way around, okay? It's a long voyage, right? So we can see how big these how much of an undertaking these things were, right? It's pretty insane, right? Okay, so one thing, these are just a couple things to think about. Okay, that's just a second. Technical difficulties. Let's freeze this. Unfreeze. All right. So, a lot of people think that Columbus didn't know the Earth was round. He thought he was just going to go to the edge of the Earth and all this stuff. And there are some people who think this still, at this time. But pretty much everybody knows at this time that the Earth is round, and there are a lot of theories on how big around it is, and they do a lot of math and science to figure out the circumference of the Earth. But Pythagoras, the Pythagorean theorem and all that, he figures out, he has the theory all the way in 500 BCE. So that's 500 years before Common Era or before the birth of Christ, right? So he has that theory already. And then a couple of hundred years later, Aristotle, he says that the Earth is round because the stars that you see in Rome are different from the stars you see in Egypt. So that was his theory, thinking about where the stars are placed. Okay? And then even later on, Aristophanes measures the circumference of the Earth. He actually gets decently close to what we know now with our sensitive instruments and that kind of thing. Okay? So for the time period, he gets ridiculously close, right? And this is a sextant. This is what they're using to look at the stars and try to figure out where they are in relation to the heavens, the stars. Okay, so where a star is in the horizon could help you determine where you were in the world. Okay, so that's just a little bit of background knowledge for all this age of discovery. Okay, so this is all. This is all some knowledge that they already knew, okay? Does that make sense? Do you understand that? Have any questions about that?
No.
Okay, cool.